Hey, everybody, it's Honesty, and this is episode 2 of season 4 of the Right Honesty podcast. And as you know, we are discussing the Love Unaccounted series by Love Belvin featuring Ezra and Lex. Attorney General, I have already asked how you're doing off mic, and so I will tell the listeners that she is okay. We're just going to say, okay. That's what we're going to say.
Yes.
So I will turn it over to you to lead our discussion today. What do you have for us?
Oh, no pressure. So we were going to continue talking about some of the points that some of the ladies had graciously given us when we reached out and asked. And so one of the things that I wanted to start with was, and I think this came from Sean, the point on abstinence, and I combined that with sex in the church, right?
Okay.
um and we had talked last week about how Ezra was consistent with his faith and that they did not engage in premarital sex. They had that moment, right, where he
Two
punished her,
moments.
right? Well, but he punished her with the vibrator,
Yes, he
right?
did.
Right. And somebody said, "Well, Pastor, that's not very godly." And he felt a certain amount of guilt for that, right?
Hmm.
And then tried to exercise more self-control.
Some
But
restraint.
but he did abstain. They did not have full blown sex.
No, they didn't. Although when I was a youth pastor, I used to tell my kids, if you are responsible for somebody else's orgasm, you are no longer a virgin.
Woo!
So
What?
don't
Excuse
don't get into the whole it was just a little bit of mouth. Sex is in the title. Oral sex is in the title. So if you are responsible for stimulating somebody else's genitals, or you're responsible for somebody else's orgasm, you're not a virgin. Stop foolishness, stop playing. But I also told my kids they could have sex. So I was a terrible youth minister for
Oh,
sure.
oh,
But
okay. Oh yeah,
well,
you was
I wanted to get away from, number one, telling teenagers, because they were all, I mean, it was like a youth and young adult thing. So this was the older kids, but the older ones, like 18 to 22, 3.
hmm
But linking sex and love is dangerous.
yes,
And
yes,
saying that when two adults care about each other very much and they're in love, because what if I'm the only one that's in love?
true,
And you just said you was in love, but you wasn't, but you
true,
knew what you was gonna get if you said I love you too.
true.
And so I was trying to get them to separate that out. I was also trying to get them out of that purity culture, looking for loopholes.
Mm.
If you fucking, you fucking. Stop trying to act like Jesus don't understand that oral sex is sex.
My ears.
So if you gonna abstain, abstain. And if you not, let's have another conversation about how you can be safe. But like, let's not start to pretend like just because his penis wasn't in my vagina that I'm still a virgin, because he was in your hindquarters, ma'am. So
So graphic, so
I'm just
graphic.
saying. Anyway, go ahead.
No, but for all of our key king, you are making excellent points, right? And I think that it's two parts to this. One I think is more important, and some of the things that you just articulated, more important when you're talking about younger people.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a part of this that I think is important when you're talking about people with a certain amount of life experience under their belt, right?
Absolutely.
And so these characters are at a certain
Right.
level in life. And obviously we knew Lex had, this horrific trauma. Although it had seemed, what we're told is that Lex had had sex since then,
Mm-hmm.
and was very proud of the fact that she owned her own orgasms
Mm-hmm.
and owned her pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was good because um, it was giving us someone who was obviously not fully healed from what had happened, right? But was able to heal to the point where she experienced sex again. And from what we're told, her complaints, so to speak, and I'm putting that in air quotes because it's not like Lex really complained about her prior partners, but that it was just fine, right? It
Yeah,
wasn't like mind blowing. And that's a lot of women, right? Where it's like,
absolutely.
so in that respect, Lex's trauma, from when we meet her, it did not taint the experience. She was just kind of like, this feels like much ado about nothing, right? Like this is and again, I think until you meet someone that blows your mind,
Right. Right.
completely understand why she's like, listen,
Uh-huh.
but I think for these folks, and it's something that I've seen come up, on social media a couple of times in different groups and whatnot, about the idea of people who have been sexually active making the decision to abstain
Yeah.
for purposes of reaching a deeper level of knowledge and familiarity with their partner, with sex not being a distraction,
Yeah.
right? And I think there's pros and cons to that, right? Because I certainly see the wisdom of it. I think the flip side is, when you get a certain amount of experience under your belt, you hopefully come to understand that you should be able to really, really enjoy sex, right? Like sex is, when it's done right, it's like, woo, make your head blow off, right?
Right. Right.
And, and you can't assume, and I think we have touched on this in other books, and I can't remember what they were, but it's dangerous to assume that alignment in certain areas automatically translates to sexual chemistry,
Yes, indeed.
right?
Where what's your cash app so I can send you an offering?
So it's that. And look, Lex and Ezra, they didn't have that particular problem, right? They ran into other issues, which I think, had he not been so fixated on, we need to do this right, so we need to get ourselves to the altar, right, so we can get it on and popping, that could have been, right, they could have gotten that deeper level of familiarity and knowledge of one another without sex being this huge distraction. But he, when he went into super speed, he eliminated that potential benefit, right? um and so it's funny because I say that to say, I've gotten into debates with people. I'm like, how did I end up debating this? I don't want to debate. Where people are like, well, we'll just trust the Lord. And I'm like, oh, okay. Again, I'm happy to say it every week. I don't think Jesus is micromanaging positions, right? And
Well,
pleasure, and move your tongue a little to the left and flick it a little bit harder, because no, right,
I hate
you've got to do that work. Like, the Lord
you
is not,
do. You do.
Archangel Gabriel is not going to be standing there as Gabriel, the one with the flaming sword, talking about, give us some more back shots. Like,
I'm
that's
so
not
angry with you.
how this goes. The Lord knows my
so
heart. He knows my heart.
So
he knows my
you.
heart.
Okay, so I think we need look no further than I think we need look no further than Lillian and Thaddeus.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they are an example of, so they they get married, and Lillian, she Breaking Bad in the pastor suite and whatever, the bishop office, whatever. And I said, go girl.
Yes,
I
too applauded her.
But we see them, or we see Thaddeus not long after that, when he's getting on the plane with Ezra, and Ezra and Lex are in the middle of they're starting to date and love each other and like each other and texting each other back, which is a very cute scene. But at the same time, Thaddeus is like, hey man.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Lex told Lillian that.
Right.
And this is what I will say, and this is why I will be transparent with y'all. Y'all already know this. Number one, I love filthy language. I love all filthy language. I love it. I'm gonna curse until the day I die. I spent so many years not uttering a single curse word, and now I'm gonna say them all as often as I can. But when I was in the church, part of the struggle for me was balancing reality with ideal.
Yeah.
And even Ezra struggled with this, because he was going to endorse Thaddeus and Miranda whether, like to Lex's point, they couldn't spell chemistry between the two of them.
Right.
But because Miranda came around first, and because Thaddeus had already declared his love and made his announcement and proposed to her in the church, knew, and they was accountability partners, etc., then he was going to let go the fact that they were missing a critical element to their relationship. And it's because Ezra compartmentalized all his relationships.
Yes.
And so he was missing a critical element in his own relationship, which is why he was like, I don't understand the hullabaloo about it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because
right.
it didn't mean that much to him at the time.
Right.
But when Thaddeus ends up with Lillian and he kisses her, I think after the wedding, and then they end up, together and whatever, they still were celibate, and they still were trying to observe the requirements of the church.
Yes.
But my struggle when I was in ministry, and this was whether I was a youth minister or any other, any other of the calls that I pursued, the reality of the situation is that sexual chemistry is something that you develop through communication and being vulnerable. And if you don't take the time to do that, and more importantly, if you don't have the language to do that, you end up where most women are, which is something like 6% of women have orgasms with their partner. Now, the lesbians have it figured out.
6%.
Yeah. And the men, they orgasm like 90-something% of the time.
Yeah.
And so you end up with men who and so aptly put in, I had heard this before, but I loved it when it showed up in Love's an Eligible Receiver, because Rut says that Divine told him, if you don't know how to please your lady, you just masturbating with another person in the room.
Yes.
And so if men don't learn that each woman's body is different, and I have to talk to her and listen to her and be attentive to her and watch her breath and, all of that stuff to figure out if I'm doing the right thing, because women are not socialized to tell men the truth in the bedroom, because we are socialized to protect their egos.
Yes.
And so that was my issue with, number one, telling people to date for marriage when they're 16. That's something for another day. Yeah. But number two, not giving people the language of intimacy, but expecting that the moment they get married, they're going to be swinging from the rafters because the bed is undefiled.
Right.
You ain't taught, now you done taught them how to speak in tongues. You taught them how to shout. You taught them how to pray. You taught them how to sing. You taught them how to hoop. But the thing that is critical to the survival of their marriage, we can't talk about.
Exactly.
And so Lillian and Thaddeus, thank goodness, at least Thaddeus was pleased. We don't know if Lillian was pleased, but hopefully she was. But that was my issue with it, and the fact that people gonna do it anyway.
Indeed. Indeed.
But that aside, like, yes, sex is safest in safe marriages, because not every marriage is safe.
That's true too.
And so just because we marry, if he's still cheating and then brought herpes in the house, well, what did being married net me?
Exactly.
And so here again, I'm gonna just be honest with you, I was a terrible minister. I was an excellent believer. I was a horrible minister because I never could jive the two. And if you spend any time with young people and you know how much they suffer emotionally and spiritually when they make that mistake.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to let some of these I got to let these turn off the hook.
Yeah.
Because these kids will be in agony. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. So for Ezra and Lex, I understood his abstaining because he was buck wild. So you needed a little period of dormancy. Yes. You was getting ready to, ride that thing till the wheels came off. Right. And for her, I understood, yes, she had sex, but it had been so inconsequential in her day.
She was like, meh.
She might as well take care of herself.
Right.
But for other couples who don't have the benefit of, number one partner knowing their body and what they like, because she says, when she would be with other partners, she would tell them, hey, this is what you're going to need to do toward the end. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you have one person that knows their body and knows what they like and have gone to the trouble, quote unquote, of learning their pleasure points and what's important to them and what's not. And then you have this other person that has done a deep dive into a kink,
Yes,
or a
Lord.
variety of kinks. And so together they were comfortable in the language of sex and sexual intimacy. But Lillian was a virgin.
Right.
So
Right.
so she just had to hope for the best.
Right.
And it's not to say that you have to experiment to know yourself. You have to experiment with other people to know yourself, because you don't. But it just was an example to me that Thaddeus was like, hey, can you give me some pointers?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because they're in the church, there is no time or space to talk about pleasing your spouse
Right.
or pleasing yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an excellent point to ponder, but it's also like a little bit tricky. And I don't know how the church gets in or out of that sticky wicket.
Well, it's interesting because I think for the very reasons you've raised, for example, a young lady I follow on IG, Unfit Christian, right?
Mm,
Who um really has just, her platform is truly about tearing down these old, you know, notions that from her perspective, obviously it's the, if they don't serve us,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
But more than that, she goes and she does the deep dive in the Bible, and she's like, I don't agree with how this has long been interpreted, right? So
Now let's talk about. Oh, let me be quiet. I'm
yeah,
gonna be quiet. I'm gonna be quiet.
she's great. I'll sing. It's Unfit Christian
Oh,
on
I don't
IG.
already looked it up, honey, because this is up my alley.
Yeah. And it really gives you food for thought, because again, kind of going back to something I said last week about, the Kirk Franklin comment, and the one woman who commented said, I didn't find it applicable to my real life. And that's just not how I
Mm-hmm.
manage my finances, how I
Right.
navigate my non-romantic relationships. This is part of it too, because to your
Mm-hmm.
point, when are we talking about sex?
Mm-hmm.
When are, like, what we're told before you're married is, don't do it till you get married.
Right.
And then what you're told after you get married is you can have it, but we don't necessarily get into the pleasure aspect of it. And there's still the overarching, and you should be doing this for the sake of having children,
Right. And
right?
not
And
only do you need to be doing it, but you need to be instantly good at it to keep your man.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then you need to have kids as soon as your mother-in-law or your mother wants some.
And oh, by the way, it should not include
There you go.
kinky things.
There you go.
I
There
don't
you
care
go.
what kind of pleasure it brings you. I don't care,
Right.
because the Bible says sodomy and
Mm-hmm.
so, if you enjoy it, you're going to hell.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
and your husband are
Never
going
mind that
in your undefiled
anatomically,
bed, right?
right, anatomically in this body that we believe God created. Oh, okay. No, I'm gonna step back off of it. But
But if I can go back to, your point about Ezra's reaction to Thaddeus and
yeah.
Miranda versus, I I have to confess, I was with Ezra on this,
Okay.
right?
I see what kind of trouble we're gonna be in
Hold
tonight.
on,
That's fine.
hold on. In a sense of, it was plain old messy, and that was not Lillian's fault. That was Thaddeus's fault, right? Because he was the one that, similar to Ezra, sped to get engaged to this woman, right? And look, because he was armor bearer and involved in the church, wanted to do things right, fine, right? But then rediscovers Lillian, and it's like, oh wait, hold on, she's the love of my life. She's who I want to marry. And so I understood and I agreed with Ezra on the, brother, like, this is super messy, and it didn't have to go this way, right? Because he was like, say did I say to you or give you the impression that you, in order to be my armor bearer, you had to be married? Like, he asked him those
Mm-hmm.
questions to understand, like, did you feel pressure from me to go and do this? Now, at a certain point, Ezra needed to get on out his, get out the way and stop holding on to it. I agreed with that. But when he initially had his reaction to Thaddeus, I was like, you know what? I'm with him on this, because you really did you dropped Miranda on Tuesday, and the following Tuesday, and it wasn't that dramatic, but it seemed the time period was super duper short. And so I understood Ezra being like, bruh, like the dust barely settled from you dumping your previous fiance, not girlfriend, not I'm courting her. You gave her the ring and made this proclamation, and everyone knew that you all were engaged. And now here you are with another woman who's involved in the church, and now you're engaged to her. So I understood where he was coming from, when he was like, bro, this is like very messy, and I'm not there yet to be on some, you're asking for my blessing, right? It'd be one thing if he was like, Pastor, we don't went to the justice of the peace and got married, and but that's not what was presented to Ezra, right? What was presented to Ezra was a request for, a green light, a blessing, so on and so forth. Now, all that being said, I also understood Lillian demanding more from Ezra in terms of explanation when he did his about face. So I understood where Ezra was coming from, but I was also with Lillian when she was like, no, I need to better understand, because he's been stressed out. And part of that was also on that. I mean, look, Big Thad had to take it like a man, right? Because he was the one that created this messiness. Lillian didn't create it, and Ezra didn't create it. Thaddeus created it. So
this is where we're going to argue. I hope this is the only time we argue, but it might not be. So Thaddeus does not exist in a vacuum. And if Thaddeus is traveling with Ezra and everybody got somebody on their arm but him, and we understand the pressures of men in ministry, whatever tier. So whether they're the adjutant, the armor bearer, the prayer warrior, the whoever, the preacher, the bishop, whatever, we know that there's pressure on men to marry past a certain point, lest they be thought to be gay.
Yes.
Or thought to be somehow unworthy or unattractive to women.
Yes.
And so, and I feel like at some point Ezra talked about, it might have been Miranda that approached Thaddeus, but somehow Ezra says that she wanted proximity to power.
Yes. Yes.
And so, and we all know that it is not above many women to get to their desired station through a man, especially in church.
Yes.
Because in church, okay. So I understood Ezra's reticence or hesitance to be super excited about it, but I didn't appreciate him not looking at the system, because Thaddeus undoubtedly felt pressure to find himself close to and then married. Like, after a while, there are too many questions.
Yes.
And too many women approaching you. And then Thaddeus did not look like Ezra. And so depending on, the trend at the time, whether or not Big Boys was in season, attention from Miranda could have been the first or the only. And if he grew up in church like I did, and he might have went to a different kind of church, but the kind of church I went to, like, there was no opportunity to work through or talk through different kinds of attraction. And you just think that if you like somebody, you think they're cute, then you make up in your mind that you heard something from the Lord. And that's how these men end up saying to women, the Lord told me you was my wife.
Yes.
And so that's why I had a lot of mercy for him, because as it relates to marriage and relationships, there's just a lot of emotional immaturity in the church.
Yes.
Ezra included.
I agree.
So that's why to me, I could call him messy if he was just nasty and intentional. Now, if he was a drummer, because we all know about the drummers and the bass players. if he was a drummer or a bass player, and I have survived more than one drummer, thanks be to God. But if he was a drum and a bass player, because I was fast. But
I was
anyway,
about to say, I'm
oh,
like,
honey,
what's happening here?
listen, will come right out the pulpit anyway. So I'm telling you, I was a good believer, but I was a bad minister. I was a horrible. I didn't do my hoeing in ministry though. It was pre-call.
God.
My hoeing was before I heard God's call. And then I was celibate while I was listening to him. And then once I decided that Christianity was no longer for me, I turned I flipped the whole switch back on. But that's a story for another day. I'm not even going.
But then got you a husband.
I did. You see that?
Look at that.
I'm gonna stop. I'm not even gonna cut this out the podcast. I'm okay if the people know me. I don't mind if y'all know me. So, but
I don't disagree about looking at the ecosystem within which he was operating, living, breathing, right? I guess all I'm saying is that's why I said I understood why Lillian was like, no, this is not enough. But I tell you what, I wonder if had Lillian and Thaddeus just gone to the justice of the peace, right? And said, we understand it, pastor can't get past it, but we're not gonna let that dictate our lives and when we begin our life together, right?
But that was the other point to me, and I'm sorry to cut you off, that was so meaningful, is that they were waiting on him.
I get it, but
so it just shows you how much stock Thaddeus really did.
No, absolutely. But I guess what I was gonna say was, I wonder if that would have prompted Ezra to say, okay, so you weren't just talking about it. You said you gonna be about it. And you went on ahead and you married this woman. And you basically said, Pastor, I understand that you have your opinion on it, but I'm not going to let your opinion delay me from making this woman my wife.
But at the same time, his job might have been in jeopardy, because people who are full-time armor bearers and adjutants, that's a precarious.
Well, I understand that. But then again, and this may be going to elevating pastors, which we both seen, as if they are God. Because at the end of the day, we both, and I'm sure this is true, both knew people who behaved. There was no life outside the church. There was no employment outside the church. There were no friends outside the church. Now, let's remember, Thaddeus met Lillian outside the church. So
right at the little, well, she was a nurse, but to
exactly
me,
at
like,
the diabetes clinic.
Right. But the sticky part about it is, all it takes is the man or woman of God. And where I grew up, you say man of God with a D. All it takes is the man or woman of God saying, the Lord has told me you ain't it.
I get that.
And
but
so
again,
Thaddeus, with potentially no other skill set, can't work. Where else is he going to do that job? He going to be a concierge? Is he going to be Farnsworth Bentley?
Hold on. We weren't told what Thaddeus was doing.
It's true.
Before he did the armor bearer. So let's not assume that, number one. Number two, again, you are ignoring when Ezra asked him, did I say something that made you feel like you could not serve me and be married? Now, your point is well taken about the other voices, because I think it is Bishop Carmichael that it makes some type of reference about being, and it was like, really, brother? Come on now. Okay, fine. Why don't you stay in your glass house? Like, please.
Right.
But Ezra said that Thaddeus basically was making the point, did I give you the impression, the person that you are serving, did I give you the impression, or did I say to you something that made you believe you had to do this in order to continue serving me? And Thaddeus said no. Right? So
he did. I think that was when he was called to the carpet. So to me, I am with you on that. But what I have experienced and observed, if we gonna take it to the Black church, is that because it is so spooky suspicious, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just mean that the leader can hear from God something that the other people may not be cognizant of or aware of. And so the what's the word I'm looking for? The culture in the house is Ezra knows best.
Yes, agreed.
And so Thaddeus may have made up in his mind any number of stories And if his livelihood depended on Ezra thinking highly of him, then he could have spun himself into a whole frenzy.
Yes.
And you're correct. It's not until Ezra said, I never, or he asked him, but it was implied like that is, I never pushed you to that.
Right.
You never had to do that for me.
Right.
That Thaddeus began to understand, I am projecting onto Ezra what I know to be true, potentially of other leaders.
Yes.
And this is a moment that I really understand the man that I serve with,
Yes.
that I serve with. I won't say
I guess
serve under.
this comes back to me, I'm very big about accountability.
It's true. I agree.
So it's because they're not children, right?
But in
I
church,
understand.
yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I understand, but they're not children. And in this, if we're going to talk about getting married and being someone's husband, then there is a certain amount of
they're not children outside the church. Inside the church,
but they have to be.
Are.
Yeah, but they have to be accountable for that too. Like, you don't get a pass, because in my book, we don't just kind of say, well, you can't possibly know any better,
because you have the benefit of a nuanced faith. If there are people that don't have a nuanced faith, they're going to do whatever the man or woman of God tell them to do.
I get it. But he was with a woman that was saying to him clearly, right, that his opinion should not hold us up. Right. And so query, what that, portends for Thaddeus and Lillian, because Lillian was like, I understand he has his opinions about
she said, hey, man, I don't give a good.
But she's like, but this should not hold us. Like, we know what we feel for each other. Right. We should not let this man hold us up. And it was Thaddeus, and Thaddeus has to take accountability for that, is all I'm saying. Like, it can't just be, all of these other things. You're absolutely right. And they have validity, but that does not all absolve the man from taking his portion of accountability for the fact that he projected onto Ezra and then wasn't willing to say, look, I've decided this is the woman, and I understand that you don't completely understand, Pastor, but this is the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I want to be with her, and I'm going to be with her. So we're going to go and do this, and I hope that you come around. Or if you don't come around, then I'm just going to have to find a way to be okay with that, because I've said that this woman is the person I'm going to forsake all others for. That's supposed to not just include all other women. That's supposed to be everybody, right? Everybody is supposed to come second to your spouse. But I'm not going to do it until Pastor gives me his blessing.
Go ahead, yeah.
And so Big Thad had to take accountability for that, because query, would they still be waiting if Ezra was still like, it's still just too
probably
right?
If Lillian did not understand that Ezra is a man, and probably had her fair share of stories from Lex about how he is a regular man, they probably would still have been waiting, because Thaddeus was like,
Thaddeus was being a punk.
He was stuck. He was
being a punk. He was being a punk.
I think Thaddeus is an example of where you can find yourself if you don't interrogate your faith and take your adulthood with you into the church house. But not everybody does that.
You're right. No. You're absolutely right. And you end up being a punk. Sorry.
What's next, Attorney General?
Covering.
Oh, okay.
And, one of the things that I thought was that the lack of covering was something that Lex and Precious had in common, despite their very different upbringings.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because obviously for Lex, she had no covering because she raised herself, basically.
Yeah.
And Precious, despite having her father and then Bishop, she also had no covering when it boils down to it, because the father passed away, whenever he passed away, and the covering that was both in place when her father was there and after he was gone, look where that led her.
Right.
Years of her life.
Yeah.
That she can't get back, right? Following the quote unquote guidance and leadership and being under the covering of Bishop Carmichael, right? And as between the two, look, because Lex gets the man, we're like, well, Lex came out better, but Lex came out better, quote unquote, for it because Lex knew who she
There you go.
was.
Yeah.
Right before she met Ezra, she knew who she was. She was doing work that aligned with her purpose, that gave her tremendous satisfaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
For all of the frustration and the lack of resources, like Lex was doing work that she felt called to do, even though she didn't use that kind of
Right,
language,
right,
right?
right, right, right.
And what we know with Precious quitting, everything just peace, y'all,
Right, right.
that clearly Precious was not doing work that she had been called to do, that was giving her purpose aside from
Waiting on him.
being in the wings for Ezra,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I thought that was so sad. Like once
Yeah.
I got past the, F her and the horse she rode in on, and a mama and her surrogate daddy, like
Poor
once you get,
George, child. George died
yes,
20 years ago. Anybody thought about
seriously,
George
that's
since?
right. Bless George. George ain't have to watch the whole mess unfold. But
Right.
once you get past that, I think you're able to have a level of sympathy for this woman who wasted
Yeah.
years that she can't get back, and it's sad because she did that trusting the people that she should have been able to trust implicitly,
Yep.
right? That
Yep.
they
Yep.
would
Yep.
not lead her in the wrong direction. And instead, look what happened. Because if
Mm-hmm.
Precious was a year or two, right? I think what we're told, she's just a couple of years younger than Ezra. So Precious is mid to late 30s, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, gone,
Yeah.
just gone.
That's a lot of time to have
Woo, the
wasted,
child,
for
like,
sure.
woo,
And I will say, wasted is strong, but at least I would say it's a lot of time to have spent serving the dreams and expectations of others.
That's why I say wasted.
Yeah.
Because to me, it didn't sound like Precious had done what she
Mm-mm.
wanted to do. Right. Precious did what others wanted her to do and did it incredibly well. And, we talked about this offline. Well, I think this is a segue into, the value that Precious brought to the
Mm-hmm.
table, right? Because love made her more than just this
Yeah.
caricature that we can just hate.
Yeah.
I mean,
She's
you
a
can,
cautionary tale.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so I thought we got to see the the consequences or repercussions of a lack of covering played out in two different ways.
I
And,
agree. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, and ending up, in ways that you probably would not expect, right? Because you're figuring, oh, she didn't have, with Lex not having her daddy not being worth a damn, and
Right.
well, Bishop wasn't worth a damn either. So,
Right,
you know,
right. It's true. It's true.
six in one hand,
And
half dozen in the
half a
other.
dozen in the other. And I did feel for her. I've seen her. I've known Precious's
Mm-hmm.
in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and men and women.
Yeah.
And it is a a painful place to be, to always be waiting for your turn,
Mm-hmm.
even though you're not sure you want what you're waiting for.
Yep. Yep.
And because she had experience with Ezra and wanted to call the police, child. She was
Right.
like, "Oh, I know this ain't
Right.
right."
Right.
And so I don't know that she even wanted Ezra as much as she just knew she was supposed to be the bishop's wife.
Correct.
And
Correct.
to not have the opportunity to form your own identity into your 30s,
Yeah, child.
is a heavy burden to bear.
Yeah.
And I it you her ending for me was one of those situations where the benefit of being called on your shit, how even if in the moment it feels horrible, if you're lucky and if things align the way they should, it's the greatest gift anybody could ever give you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Lex, and it wasn't the kindest way, but Lex sort of really letting her have it
Yeah.
was what shook her awake. Like, I am still legit pining for and offering myself to a man who has overlooked me for the last 17, 16, 18 years.
Almost 2 decades.
Almost
Ooh,
20
child.
years I have been waiting for this man to change his mind about me. He
Right.
already has an opinion about me.
Right.
I'm
Right.
hoping he gonna change his mind about me.
Yeah.
And I'm not pursuing other opportunities. Mind you, she was the chief operating officer. She may not have had the title, but that's who
Yes.
she was.
Yes.
She was the
Yes.
chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar corporation.
Yeah.
And she was waiting on this man to change his mind.
Yeah.
And so Lex finally being like, and it was two things happening at once. It was Lex recognizing Precious for who she was, almost like seeing the emperor with, with no clothes, and being like, oh, your situation is actually sad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to be threatened by you. I should feel compassion towards you because
Yeah.
your life is in a full shamble.
Yeah.
Like, this man lays between my legs. He
Yes.
wakes me up with his tongue. And you waiting? Like, oh wow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, but I
Yeah.
think it was in that conversation potentially that Precious was like, holy shit, she's right.
Yeah.
And not, what's the man name? Wilkerson?
Seth.
Seth. You know, he don't have it for me either. I'm a pawn or a trophy.
Yep.
And to be able to be at that age and not be able to identify, here again, almost like Ezra, but not quite, having a loving mutual relationship
Yeah.
at that age because you doing something else, and you're poo-pooing your own skill set and ability and experiences because you're missing that one title, wife.
Yeah.
You was doing everything else, but had traveled all over the world, knew every preacher, probably could listen. I'm telling y'all, I'm gonna stop harping on it, but I've been in these streets. I'm telling y'all, I know what that is, and I've seen it. And to have been all over the world, any man would have loved to have her, which Ezra says, the chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar corporation, and you are poo-pooing it all because you are not any man's wife. Like, that is stunning. It'll really make you sit back and be like, what is this we doing here with the way we training these women? And I think that speaks to this idea of covering. Like, what are we covering our young girls with in the church? Like, what are we teaching them? What are we telling them is important? What are we telling them that they have to suffer through?
And here's what's so, I mean, which I think we all recognize on the surface, but like, it was so sick and insidious because her mother wasn't even.
Yep.
She wasn't. She was grooming her to be both a wife and a fallback
and a concubine
at the very same time.
It
was like, right. I'm grooming you for plan A and for plan B.
And for plan B.
So plan A, you get to be Mrs. Ezra Carmichael. If not, I'm grooming you to be plan B. You gonna go on and sit with me, in a nurse's
ministry. And live out your days as somebody's hobby.
Yeah.
Child, I'm take some good stuff. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So I really did. I felt for her. But also, to the point of covering, I will say, Lex's mom wasn't always wrong. And like, just in the sense of Lex talking about like, and I think Ezra says like speaking life.
Yeah.
So like when Lex would say that she was stupid, now her mother's response was abusive and extreme.
Yes.
But the heart of it was to express to her, no, you're not.
Yes.
And the same about the wedding day, and the same about the two kids, and the he gonna love the hell out of you, and he gonna buy you a Jaguar. Like, so I appreciated her writing Tiny in a way that showed that yes, she had her issues, and that, but at the same time, everybody that's crazy ain't crazy.
Yeah.
And that there were things that she said and things that she wanted for her daughter that she may not have been able to orchestrate, but she still loved her daughter enough to dream on her behalf.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And she spoke life.
Yep.
She spoke life to her.
And so even with her chaotic mental state, she still could look on her little girl and say, my baby going to college, she gonna get 2 degrees.
Yeah.
It really was really like well illustrated in the text conversation that they have about that as Lex is saying, you know, she beat me, but she loved me. And I grew to understand that it was just a part of her illness, and him really understanding that her mother did love her the best way she
She
could.
knew how. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it wasn't always the safest
Right.
way that she
Right.
expressed her love, but she did love her.
Yeah.
And so you're right to say that, like, for Precious, we don't know if George was okay or not, but Marva, we know Marva was not okay.
Right.
And we know Sylvester was not okay. And so Precious almost couldn't win. But for Lex, like, her mom did, in her limited capacity, try.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't enough, because sometimes it's just not enough.
And it just kind of goes back to the point of, and I think we said this last week in relation to Lesra and Lesra, Lex and Ezra, in terms of like orphans, right? The kind of plan, and you can put Precious in that category, because the adults in her life, look how they didn't serve her well at all. And it was just sad that, number one, Ezra did okay because he broke away and saw some things and experienced some things and formed his own identity, right? Lex did okay because she, you know, was the Phoenix. Exactly. Phoenix rising from the ashes. And also her parents were physically taken away, right, from her, where they were no longer in the picture at a certain point anyway. You know, whereas Precious just stayed under the influence, and that's how you're 35, 36, you know, and never been married, no children, despite those being two things you very, very, very much wanted. But to your point, you've convinced yourself and allowed other people to convince you that it's with this particular man right here. So you didn't even leave yourself open to the possibility of having it with someone else, right? Because to your point, Seth did not count. Right. No. Seth didn't care. Everybody knew Seth didn't care. She's like, child, please. Right. And I agree with you that I don't think she did actually want Ezra. Right. She wanted the idea, and she wanted the status, and she wanted what she had been told.
Yeah. She was told what to do, so she did.
Yes. What was supposed to be her destiny. But she, yeah. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, she was a lot.
And kind of going back to you when you called her chief operating officer, you're exactly right. And I appreciated when Ezra reflected on, you know, how much value she brought.
3, 4, 5 people to replace her.
Exactly. And so I did think to myself, well, she was probably the only one that we knew of who had full-time employment with the church that was actually earning her keep. Right, because it seemed like everybody else we were getting exposure to, other than Sister Shannon, right? And I, you know, God bless her. But
now, everybody else, Bethea was doing a little bit, wasn't she?
Yes, well, but see, Ann Bethea was HR.
Right, she wasn't a member. If she was, she wasn't tied up in it.
Exactly. This issue of people getting jobs because they're in the right clique, you know, not necessarily because of their competency. And I like that Ezra was very focused on not just the church getting its house in order, but also Christ Cares being right, actually serving the community. And he wanted people that knew what they were doing, not people who were, you know, basically being plucked again from the inner sanctum of the church and plopped into these probably nice paying jobs, right? Because they were down with sister so-and-so, or, you know, brother so-and-so, or whatever the case may be. But again, that reflected his worldliness, right? That he understood the way it had been managed to that point was not completely appropriate.
Cannot continue on this road.
Exactly. So Precious. Oh, poor Precious.
Poor Precious. But now she's in France and in culinary school, and maybe she on the Food Network now or something.
Right. And maybe she found herself a lovely French man who gave her some ooh la la. You know, finally she found out what makes her eyes roll back, you know, in the back of her head. Exactly. Said for the Golden Girls. It took me years before I knew what made your eyes roll in the back of your head. Hopefully Precious has had that kind of experience, bless her heart. Yeah. We'll have to ask Love at some point. Love, did Precious get us some good?
Precious, all right, child.
Another point that came up was this, you know, the concept of independence and merging independence with becoming a spouse.
Go
Again,
ahead.
a very real issue, right?
Very real.
Because it
I'm
was
still
clear.
struggling with it. We've been together for 11 years.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's
It's
hard.
tough, and I can't even blame like a Lex type upbringing. It's
Me
just
either.
it's like it's tough. And it's not it. Yeah. So let's start with the characters, right? Because Independence was all Lex knew,
Yes.
right? And Coverage was all
Mm-hmm.
that Ezra knew,
Mm-hmm.
right? In terms of how he thought of himself as a husband,
Right.
even having, from what we can tell, little to no romantic adult experience. But he came in with this: I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to do these things for you. You should know that you can come to me. You should know.
Right.
And yet, as we talked about last week, didn't seem to understand. Right,
The
he was
other
so
elements.
clinical,
Yeah, the other
right,
pieces of the
and
puzzle.
right, Vulcan like about it that you know it's like, well, sir, you haven't. I
You
don't
missing
know
the
that.
point, sir.
Right, right. I don't know that I want to come to you because you're not warm and fuzzy. Like I can't, except for
Mm-hmm.
when we're done in the sandbox, and even then you're not warm and fuzzy. But you are asking me, what did I like? What can you do differently? What can you do
Right.
better?
Right.
But it's confined to that, right? And I will acknowledge that it was almost like he expected her to simply know, well, I'm your husband. Yes, I'm your husband. And that means X, Y, Z, X, Y, X, Y, right? That means all of these things. And you should know that I am here to do all of these and be these things for you,
Yeah. I
except
think
the emotional part.
I think it's about how hard okay. Like you're saying, he came to the situation prepared to take care of her, but not didn't take the time initially to understand what care she needed taking.
Right. Right.
And so he really had a one-track mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what he just like she was just supposed to instantly be on board. Now, if she was Natalia, maybe, but even that doesn't fit because part of the reason he had to help Jabaru, is that how you
Right.
say it? I don't know. Part of the reason he had to help Jabaru with Natalia is because she wouldn't get on board.
Correct.
And so, or couldn't, she didn't have the frame of reference to be with someone that wanted her as more than a flesh doll.
Yes. Yes.
And so Ezra went through the process of helping her understand that there was a different way to be, but he was missing that. That was a blind spot for him with Lex.
Yes. Yes.
And I think for her, because y'all know I do not allow any Lex slander, but I will acknowledge in this moment that she could have done a better job of articulating her need.
Yeah.
As it relates to her what's the word I'm looking for? Her integrating into his household.
Yeah.
Or even them building a household together, because it was him who said our way, right? And that he was expanding her mind and something. So I felt like both of them failed on that front. He failed to understand that he needed to be more available to her, and she failed to understand that it was his primary desire that she feel wanted and comfortable, because that was necessary for him to get the other thing he needed.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? But
yes.
that, and I think we mentioned it last week, how after the incident with Bishop, she thinks that he's left the house for good, not understanding that, like, and he tells her this on the honeymoon, like, you are my inheritance.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think they both thought, him more than her, that certain things would be instant.
Yes.
When that's impossible when you're dealing with another human. But it is a lie that we often tell.
Yes.
Like in a lot of our narratives, whether it's the church or fiction or TV or whatever, that there's this instant attraction, and then we instantly know each other and what the other person likes, and we're instantly like, there are very few depictions of how long it actually takes to know your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to not take offense to everything they say, and to not turn everything into a fight, and to not make assumptions, and to really be like, okay, wait a minute.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like, I may be getting ready to take it this way, but him probably don't mean it this way. So let's have a conversation. Or even in the merging of finances.
So and to that point, back to myths, right? Because as you were talking, something that struck me. I think the danger of the myth that the honeymoon period is supposed to just last,
My.
right?
I swear I need your cash app.
And
Get you a
and
love offering.
viewing and viewing the bumps in the road, particularly, I think, even when you have lived together beforehand, there are different types of bumps in the road, I think, that happen in that situation. But when you haven't lived together before you got married, then you get married,
Yep.
and you move in together, and so now you have all of the expectations that you attach to what it means to
Yes,
being
indeed.
married clashing and head
Mm-hmm.
on collision with the
Mm-hmm.
reality of sharing your space
My.
with someone who you don't know in that way. I don't care
Yep.
how much time you were spending at
Yep.
each other's respective homes,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And the danger that you immediately start thinking, this is not good, this is not good, this is not good, as
Right.
opposed to, these are growing
There you
pains.
go.
We're going to have to settle into each
Yes.
other and get to know each other and find a rhythm. And how do you leave the toilet tissue, right? Do you stay on point of replacing the
Yes.
toothpaste?
Yes. And your gym shoes stink.
Yeah.
You need
Oh,
shoe trees.
all of these things, like
Like,
how high do you let the clothing basket get, the dirty clothes
right.
basket get, before you finally take it and wash it? Like,
Right. Right.
all of these things that are in your face because you are sharing the same space with each other day in, day out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it said, the first 5 years of marriage, people are like, 5 years.
No, but for real.
Yeah, because
Honey, my 9th anniversary is November 10th. We've been together for 11 years, married for 9. And yesterday is when I understood this nigga. Like,
certain lessons that you have to learn the hard way.
yes.
One of mine was that I think it was Reverend Run that said it, that peace is often better than being right.
Yeah.
And it took me years
Mm-hmm.
to embrace that, because I just had to say what I had to say,
Absolutely.
and argue my point.
No, I had to. Now I say, okay, babe.
Right.
But he know if I say, okay, babe, that is a dismissal.
Yes.
Let us end this conversation and go back to being lovers, because I'm about to light you up. So you need to accept this, okay, babe.
Yeah. So it's independence is just one part of that. Yes. Right? It's so many different value systems, and I think that can be part of the being unequally yoked conversation. Absolutely. But it's just kind of tying into those practical things, right? And the more settled in you are to being who you are, which naturally happens the older that you get, and or when you've had experiences that have forced you to think and behave like a full-fledged adult. Mm-hmm. Which, look, when we meet Lex is 30 or turning 30, but Lex has had to be a full-fledged adult for years and years and years.
For probably like 15 years, almost, if not more. But I think the flip side of that is maintaining your independence in your relationship or your marriage. Because I think the flip side, and he speaks about it too, like he despises men who can't pee without their wife being in the doorway.
Right.
And this idea that now that we're married, we have to do everything together and we have to be symbiotes, if y'all are fans of the Spider-Man franchise, but like we have to have everything in common all the time, constantly agreeing, never disagreeing, of the same mind, of the same body. And that's not true either.
No.
And so speaking to Ezra and Lex though about it, she really did lose herself in the process of trying to gain him. And
Yes.
to your point of
Yes.
accountability, had she been more accountable to her own emotional needs, then maybe she would not have found herself saying yes, 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 when
Right.
sometimes she really meant no, 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 no,
Right.
no.
Right.
And to that point about, yes, you become one, like if that's what you believe, but certainly you become a pair, or like,
Right.
you know,
Right.
bonded, as like the third book says. If you choose not to use the language of becoming one, you certainly become bonded. But the idea was never for either one of you to disappear.
Right. Right.
And I think that that was something that she struggled with.
Yeah.
How much, how many times can I say no before you put me out?
Right.
And
Right.
that's the danger of one person having all the power. Now, they did sign a prenup. He also signed the house over to her.
Right.
And he said more than once that, you know, I will walk away homeless
Yeah.
if we dissolve this marriage. But I don't think that that's something that she really understood or believed until they really started to bond with each other and form a sustainable relationship.
Yeah.
But I can say I did the same thing in the early days of my marriage until I had to be like, hey, I am uncomfortable and I'm
Yeah.
like, I think I made a mistake. You know what I mean? Like I might have tried to be invisible to be acceptable, but now I'm dying because I have given up a percentage of me that's no longer tenable.
Mm.
And so I have gone over into 26%. 25 was
Mm.
okay, but now I'm at 26 and now we got a problem. And
Mm.
so even for people to know that that's coming, I didn't know that was coming.
Right.
I had no idea that was going to happen. I just knew I was supposed to submit and love my husband and do what he say under God because of the Holy Ghost. Amen. And it wasn't until I was like, hey, I'm actually better at that than you. Can we have a
Yeah.
conversation? Because I don't want to keep going down this dead end because I'm the one with the map quest instructions that I printed out.
Oh, you done told on yourself. You done MapQuest directions. Wow.
And
Only
printed them
people of a
out.
certain age
Listen,
will understand.
understand that you got to turn on the
reference.
lights. You got to turn on the cabin light to see the instructions, honey, when you get when you're in the dock on the highway trying to get somewhere. But anyway, no, but I mean, I think it's an excellent point. This idea of balancing your independence and your coupledom, so that neither one is to the detriment of the individual or the pair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think I was kind of the opposite, where
Hmm.
I had to learn how to bend more.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And we got together when I was still in my early 20s. We got married, I was mid 20s.
Mm.
But my attitude was always
And it makes
a
sense. It's
strong
not enough for
stank
me.
one.
Yeah, it's not enough. And that's
How
how I know
dare
why I always be
you?
giving you the blues because
How dare you? Whatever. So I had to learn how to and it was never coming from a place of, I don't believe you, I don't trust you, I don't have enough faith in you, right? It was, I think, that type A personality run amok,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
right? It's kind of like, no, I'm going to do it this way because do
Because that's the way that makes the
it,
most sense.
right? We're going to, and I have complete control because that's how I know it's going to get done. And that's how it's going to go. And again, recognizing that when you are sharing your life with someone, it can't
Yeah,
play
can't
out
always
that
be that way.
way
Hmm.
all the time. And if it is and nothing is being said, watch out.
Yeah,
Right. I'm
yeah.
always, when I see, older couples are talking about, and we never disagreed. And, we always, and I'm just like, somebody was boiling kitties or something. Cause that just, I
Yeah.
guess, but different strokes for different folks. But my antenna goes up when I hear things like that because I feel like it is more likely that, as you just noted, someone is burying something,
Mm-hmm.
burying a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe they never exploded, but that doesn't mean that they were happy and
Right,
fulfilled, and
right, 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 right.
so on and so forth. So I thought that was a good point, and it's something that we see play out in different ways in relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, another one of the many things that we've noted that love, put in this fictional story that were very real,
Mm-hmm.
and we could
Mm-hmm.
absolutely relate to, that we've seen play out with family, friends, and maybe even in our own relationships. And then I think the last point was spirituality, how people can be in sync with themselves in spirit versus roles and or practices of religion. And I guess all I would say to that is that you and I have, while not maybe using these exact words, this is a conversation that we've had,
Yeah.
right? And the importance of understanding the difference. And I think we both agree that Ezra was the real deal,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of his spirituality and his gift. But he was definitely surrounded by folks that were in we playing a role, right?
Yeah.
The role of religion. We're practicing religion, but what nothing but their lives edifying God the way that it should have been. And we and that's real too, right? Of We've seen people do that, where what you say, laid out in the pulpit at noon, and by 1:30 they're cursing the people out in the
Mm-hmm.
parking
Mm-hmm.
the parking
Yes,
lot.
indeed.
But also a point that I've made before from personal experience is when you place too much stock in the practice and the people and the institution, and they let you down,
Right.
the inability to distinguish between that and your spirituality, right?
Yeah.
Because you tied it so much to being in the building 5 days a week, being going to the pastor's house every, second and fourth Sunday for dinner, and
Mm-hmm.
being there for the holidays, and so on and so forth. Um and I watched that, right? I watched that play out, and I wondered to myself how many of those folks, when that got, if that were to be stripped away,
Yeah.
what's left for
Right.
many of those folks,
Right.
right? And at least for myself, when those things were taken away, um, I understood and appreciated the foundation my mother had laid, because it wasn't, while I certainly loved when we were in the inner circle, because it was warm and fuzzy and
Mm-hmm.
connected and all those great things,
Fruitful.
right? When it was just me and God, I was more than okay with that, right?
Yeah.
And dug deeper into that as a result of that heartache, as opposed to pushing him away, or saying, you know, you turned on me because these people turned on me.
Yeah.
Um, so it's an important point, and there are unfortunately a lot of folks who tied themselves to the institutions and the this and the that, and marrying one of the pastor's sons, and thinking that's the highway to heaven. And we're all just people in the end,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
We are all people.
And I think that's the thing. So I think last week we were talking about like, I was saying you got to know why you go.
Yep. Yep.
And some people really do go for community, but they also believe that it's God given community. And because this is the church, this is where
Yeah.
he's supposed to live at.
Yeah.
And so for the people in the Lord's house to act up, I mean, listen, that what am I supposed to do with that? And so for Ezra to have I think we talked about another podcast, when you see how the sausage is made at the church house,
Yes. Yes.
you are disabused
Yes.
of all of those notions
Yeah.
about any idea that everybody in here has good intentions, that everybody in here is in fact interested in um being being saved and living right and sanctified and working out their soul salvation, etc. I mean, but a prime example of that was Wilkerson.
Yes.
He was a whole predator
Yes.
that was using the pulpit and his skills as an orator to trap unknown number of women for his own devices, for his own
Yes.
designs.
Yep.
And the bishop invited him to preach,
Mm-hmm.
knowing full well that it would irritate Ezra. I don't know that he knew a whole lot about the rest of Wilkinson's agenda, but like it's, I think here again, it speaks to, it's like Fowler's stages of faith. And as you walk through the stages of faith, you come to have a different understanding of the tenets versus the institution versus the people who execute the tenets in the institution.
Mm.
And for somebody like Tashi, who they told us on the internet is Tashi, not Tosh.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Tara. But for somebody like her, whose eyes been wide open, and she done seen some of the bishops in the strip club and asking her for her time after the fact, she know it's smoke and mirrors for some.
Yeah.
And it's truth and revelation for others.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, like maybe a oh hell, what is Jade, who whenever Lex would make mention of anything sexual, she'd be like, I'm not going there with you, First Lady.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because it just had not dawned on her that Lex would be human and be the pastor and eventually the bishop's wife and still let a curse word rip or talk about, you know, he gave me a little spanking and put me to bed. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I do think it requires, again, it's something that we've talked about, is bringing your adulthood to your faith.
Yes.
And because what's crazy is that there are things that we will permit in the church that we wouldn't let nobody get away with outside, just on the curb outside, not even too far. Like, and so it's just, Lex had the ability to bring her life experience with her and bring her adulthood into the sanctuary and be a thinking believer.
Yes.
Lillian was able to do the same thing.
Yes.
Thaddeus was not.
Correct.
And that's why it took Lillian saying, hey, talk to your boy or I'm going to talk to your boy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Bishop or not, we want to be together and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Precious is another one who, for all of her seeing how the sausage was made, she didn't bring her adulthood with her into the sanctuary.
Correct.
So I think it's an interesting place to be, because you're supposed to suspend all of that and give yourself over and open your eyes of my heart, Lord, and have a faith like a little child and all of these things that we say that make sense in context, but can't be applied universally because you end up in a trick bag.
Yeah.
If you do.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah. No, I like the way you have phrased it in terms of bringing your adult self, bringing your adulthood into the church. And that also requires having experiences, meaningful experiences outside of the church and outside of your circle in the church.
Right.
You know, because if you're not having that, then what you're doing is not really engaging with the world, so to speak, right? Yep. Because the world is a dangerous place, right? And so while you're physically in it, because you have to be in school or your job or whatever, you're not really engaging, right? Your mind and your heart are still in the sanctuary. And so you're not allowing the two. It also kind of reminds me of, you know, something I had to learn about professional me and personal me, right? And you know, realizing that there are not two me's. There's just one me, right? There's just one me. There's not this bright line between my personal life and my professional life, and never the two shall cross unless I decide they will cross. That was a fallacy that I think I believed earlier in my career, until life was like, no. That's all. I'm bleeding all over the place.
Right.
That, deal with it. And you have that, you know, come to Jesus moments, so to speak, where you're like, I need to be making decisions about my life.
Yes.
My professional endeavors, my personal life. I need to be making that from a 360-degree perspective, because that's how it's going to play out, right? Yep. What happens in my career is going to affect my personal life and vice versa. So I cannot make a decision about
Try to
one.
bifurcate.
Yes, yes. But it's like, as it sounds silly now that I look back, but I really did somehow believe that in the beginning. And it really did take life, throwing me some curveballs to be like, this is one. Oh, yeah, okay, got it. Now I understand, right? And I think so too with the spirituality and the quote unquote other parts of you,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
church me and the non-church me. It's like, no, it's just one
It's
you.
just one you.
Just one you. And just like you should not take your brain out of your head in any other aspect of your life.
Right.
Don't do that here either, because you are still dealing with human beings who are deeply flawed, inherently flawed, got their stuff, and if you start behaving as if they can do no wrong, get ready to get your feelings deeply hurt.
Yeah.
Get ready for the betrayal, because it's coming. It's coming, So yes, but that was, one more point that had been put out there. And like I said, I think we both in other discussions and here, we get it, and have lived it and have seen that play out, and people who will never go back to church.
Yeah.
Right. People who completely want nothing to do with God, don't believe in God anymore because of things that happen in the church, lives ruined, and then you've got others who, like, I respect people, I think people sometimes, Black folks in particular, still like to poke at Oprah about how she seems to have become more and more, up there, and philosophical about her faith. But that's from just having broader exposure, right? It's clear that she is still a very spiritual person. I don't know if she necessarily still ties herself specifically to Christianity, but it's clear if you continue to watch her, to listen to her, she remains and probably even more spiritual than she was decades ago, but is not tied to the dogma necessarily anymore,
Right.
And there's a lot to be said for that, because listen, somebody's right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's what we will find out one way or the other.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway. Shall we go into scenes that we enjoyed?
Yes, let's go to scenes that we enjoyed. While I'm bumping my mic, let me get myself together.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Were we supposed to talk about cliques?
I feel like we covered cliques.
Yeah, we did.
Between
with the whole
last
service,
week,
Secret Service, whole service.
Yeah. I think we covered that.
Why is it the whole Secret Service?
Well, because they were hoes. They were definitely hoeing up in that piece. What was it? Was one of the women who was staring at the side piece like she wanted to hop over the table and beat her ass? I was like, can we get more detail on that? Because I wish that would have happened.
Right. Okay, so my favorite scene, probably of all three books, is when their first Sunday back to church, and he get in that pulpit and he say, "I'm gonna greet her privately," and he speak them Indonesian words from the pulpit.
Talks nasty in the pulpit.
But you know what?
Pastor, he was talking to his wife.
I remember when I read that scene for the first time, and I was like, "Love Belvin understands." Because there are preachers that just have that much swag.
Yeah.
Like, I have done revivals with preachers who, like, literally, like, short of throwing their underwear at these men. So when there's a special place in hell, I'm gonna be honest with you, there's a special place in hell for preachers that don't do what they're supposed to do. But when there are those who do what they're supposed to do and they got swag, it was just a justified arrogance, because I could just see myself sitting in a sanctuary somewhere
squirming.
No, thank God, no. But I am, but no. But just, can you imagine being at church or at a revival and the preacher or the guest preacher just, because you can see Ezra just almost whispering into the mic, and saying these words, and nobody know what he's talking about, but everybody, "I know that's right, Bishop." And he's steady talking about the waters between her legs or whatever he said. But it was just such a moment of swagger and like justified arrogance that I said, God damn, Ezra, you go, boy. Like, I was just like, it was such a moment because I've seen it, I've done it, not specifically that, but like inside jokes from the pulpit and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So it was just a moment for me because I was absolutely at revival and seeing somebody come up and say something like that, and I was just like, she understands, she been in church, she grew up, she had to, she understands. Another favorite scene was the lap dance from his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Not the lap dance so much, but like her singing happy birthday and it just being like a really pure moment between the two of them, and her scrambling trying to figure out how to separate them when, as you so aptly put last week, she had not thought to ask.
Right. Right.
And only happened upon the information.
Right.
I have some others, but let's go to you. What are some of your favorites?
So I guess less seen and more some of the things that happen, right? I
Mhm.
loved that Mother Snell was the other miracle worker
Yes,
in the
yes,
story,
yes, yes, yes.
right? That this older woman, nondescript, right? And she comes over and she touches her, and in the moment, it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, well, why you done told this woman my business? But it wasn't another fiery preacher, right? It wasn't
Right.
even Karen or Yolanda, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the mothers of the church. Who was the other miracle worker? Since obviously we know that Ezra, right, the miracle with Jarabu's mother,
Right,
right? That
right,
was the other
right.
quote unquote miracle in the book. I loved the christening scene with little Amora
Yeah.
Ardell, right?
Yes.
And the part of that, I loved then his prayer over Lisa Mary. At the end of the book, when he is again speaking life to his daughter, right? After acknowledging to himself that he had to get himself together,
Mm-hmm.
when she was born. But the christening, because I saw that very vividly and clearly in my mind as he's holding her up, in his
Yes,
hands above
yes,
his
yes,
head,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
them having this moment of eye contact, and
Mm-hmm.
then he just kind of says, my wife is
Yeah, he blurts it out.
Mary. Right. I loved the scene with Karen Clark Sheard, right? And
Yeah.
because I do believe that, and I've seen that as well, right? Where someone said, God told me to, you were on my mind, and God just told me to
Mm-hmm.
pray for you. You'd be like, God better not be telling my business. I will never forget my then best friend's mother. And I did have something going on, and she was like, is everything okay? Because God told me
Mm.
something's going on with you. And I was like, Lord, you better not tell this woman my business. And another incident where another woman who later passed away in the church, and she was known to be a bit of a prophet, and she would have these very vivid dreams. And I remember her saying to me a couple of months before she passed away, she was like, Adrian, I would like us to find some time for me to pray with you, because God has shown me something that
Mm.
I would like. And I was kind of like,
I used to run from people like that. Don't come
I
to
I ran from her.
me.
I ran from her. We never did. And more than once over the course of my journey after that, I wondered, if I had let Karen pray with me, might I have made some different decisions? All, I
Hmm.
think played out the way that it should have. But
Mm-hmm.
that haunted me for a long time, because it scared me. Right,
Yeah.
it scared me when she said that, and I was just kind of like, listen, again, Jesus, you better not be telling people my business
Right.
now,
Right.
and then two, it just freaked me out. So I like that scene of Karen saying, the Lord just told me, we were
Mm-hmm.
headed to Queens, and the Lord said, no, you got to stop in
Right.
Harlem. and
Right. Redeeming
and
souls.
and and Ezra having that moment of conviction, like we said last week, it started with Mary, but it broke him, like Karen showing up there broke him down, right? And that was when he really took the full dose of humility and
Right.
accountability for how he had mishandled his wife and mishandled his marriage to that point.
But it was also I was so happy that as I was reading that Lex was there to witness it,
Yeah.
because she would talk about wanting to see his undoing in the
Yeah.
sandbox or in the bedroom, but that was another example of his undoing, to
Yes.
see him
Yes.
completely bare and without the mask, as she put it, and clearly in a place where what he couldn't pretend that he didn't need what he needed.
Yeah.
And I have been in circumstances in church where until the last minute I would be holding it together.
Mm.
Like, I am not doing this with y'all today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And somebody would come over or whatever. My grandmother would I used to tell her that she was whispering my name in the wind. Because sometimes she would want to speak to me. She would know that I was doing some foolishness. She would not call me, but I would call her, and she would say, I was waiting to hear from you. And I would just be like, you know what? I don't agree with any of this. I don't want nothing to do with whatever connection you got. Let me sin in peace, please.
Right.
But it was another time that, in addition to, seeing him with, Christ kitten, I can't control it, and all of that, but to also see him at the basis of places, like really what was the foundation of his identity, which he told her, I'm a church boy. I'm nothing if not a church boy. And so to find him in front of the people who he is leading, be vulnerable and open to his God, I think was a beautiful thing for her to see as well.
Yes. And that was the place that meant the most to him.
Yes.
Candidly.
Yes. Right. Yes.
So I agree with you. That was probably more key to who Ezra was than the undoing in the sandbox, right? Like that was a facet of him, but like his spirituality, right, is the core of him. And then another thing that I love was him reflecting on. So two things: the evolution of his relationship with Ms. Rima, and his own reflections, right, of the evolution of the relationship. Because in the beginning, obviously, she's the package deal, and he's kind of like, she's kind of gruff and stank. All right, I guess we'll just have to fine, as long as she stays out of my way and I'll stay out of hers. And then he appreciates, okay, well, she cooks and contributes around the house. Okay, cool. And but with Flex being gone, right, they really do develop this rhythm and camaraderie with one another.
Well, and I think she couldn't be charmed. Like he could get almost anybody on his side except for her. Even when he brought her the breadfruit, and did the shot, she was, with the shot, she was testing him. With the breadfruit, it was just the Holy Ghost that hath revealed it to him. But even throughout, once they get to the point, like you're saying, when Lex comes back for dinner and she ends up in the sandbox and they are having a conversation and laughing and joking, and she feels like she's the one on
the odd person out. Yep.
Yes. But up until that point, she was not moved by him. And I think that caused him to give her space because she was not enamored of the pastor at all.
Yeah, that's fair. I also think that that was perfectly fine with him. Yeah. Right. Because
he wasn't chasing her for sure.
Exactly. Because initially he's viewing her as one more person that's going to be in his space.
Right.
Right. And instead, they develop this rhythm where she does stay out of his way, so to speak. She's not seeking him out. And I think, while it's not explicitly said, he was clearly also concerned about her level of influence over Lex, right? And I think once it's clear to him that it's not a level of influence where he has to, quote unquote, be worried about what she might be telling his wife to do or not do.
Yeah.
I think he's even more comfortable with, like, all right, I mean, it kind of is what it is. She stays out of my way and I stay out of hers. Right. As opposed to when Lex is gone, he feels that level of responsibility where it's like, well, I mean, we're living together. We're living together. So, right. To your point, you just said that Lex is now feeling, she comes over for dinner and they're having a whole conversation, right? They're talking about the salt water and the newspaper and the this and the that, and behaving as they were clearly behaving and engaging when Lex wasn't there, right? They formed their own relationship, and I liked that.
I did too.
And I liked, because I felt like Ms. Rima's chastisement of Lex, right? It was coming from Ms. Rima had Lex's best interest at heart,
Yes,
right?
she
She
did.
was gruff and she wasn't affectionate and so on and so forth, but she did have Lex's best interest at heart. And I think, her bottom line was this man is not just taking care of our physical needs. So it's not just we gotta check, right? We got
Mm-hmm.
someone, supplying all of our needs, but she clearly believed that Ezra loved Lex, right? It could love Lex. I think she might have even believed that he was already there, but he just wasn't showing it in the way that Lex wanted. And she was like,
Yeah.
"Well, teach him,
Right.
right? Teach him." Because she does say, she's like, "Look, if you're telling me that he is mistreating you, like I will, right?
Right.
We
We'll
will
figure it out.
take care of him,
Mm-hmm.
right, and get it done." But that's not what you're telling me. You're telling me that you all are not on the same page in terms of men and women being on the same page,
And
and
that's
I'm
fixable.
telling, right, she's like, and I'm telling you that's fixable and you need to do something more about it than just running away,
Mm-hmm. Sitting in
you
this
know.
hotel eating hamburgers.
Exactly.
So let's
With
talk
red
about
onions.
before we get to other scenes that we love, let's talk about her hiding the pregnancy.
What you want to talk about? What you want to talk about? You know how I feel about that. That was, again,
Yeah,
accountability.
it was a bad idea.
It was a bad idea. And you know what I thought of earlier today? Lex didn't even follow the advice that we know Lex would have and probably did give young girls that
Yes.
she helped that were in that very same boat,
Yes, I agree.
right? Because Lex probably told countless young girls who were coming to her for help, you need to make this man needs to know you didn't make this baby on your own.
That's
He
right.
is equally responsible. He needs to know whether you all stay together or not. He needs to do his part to take care of this child. And so even when she was angry with him, right, I was kind of like, it could have been on some, and by the way, I'm pregnant and
And I'm
me and this
still
baby,
leaving.
exactly,
Right.
I'm leaving and me and this baby gonna be just fine, and F you and the horse you rode in on.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got longer. We just kept going and going and
Yeah.
going. And here's, I think, a life lesson from that, right? Because I do think that we all make that mistake of, we think we have complete control over when something is going to be made known or be revealed,
Yeah.
right? And I think more often than not, life shows us you don't have the kind of control you think you have,
Right.
right? That's a fallacy. You don't actually have the kind of control you think you have, because then Mary dies,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's like, ah,
Yeah.
what do I say? What? And by that point now we're creeping into 4 months now, right? Um,
Which I just
and it just got worse and worse, because then he does the tabulation in his mind, and he's like, so you've been walking around like this
thank
for 5 months
you.
now,
Yes.
really?
Yes.
And he said, look, I you're gonna have to let me feel how I feel about this,
Now
right?
that was one thing that I would give Ezra, that he would take the time he needed to forgive the other person.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful with that because sometimes you can venture into holding the household hostage with your mood,
Right.
but he seemed to take an appropriate amount of time to manage his emotions before he came back to her. And I think that's something that we all should probably be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but even in this instance, I couldn't understand, because I was with Lex 95% of the time, 90, because some of the spitting, I was like, ew. But,
Yeah.
but once when with the hiding of the pregnancy, I was just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, do you think he's, you know why? Because it felt like she didn't think it all the way through. So even if he rejects you, you understand that you have financial provision in this home. And so if your immediate concern was your housing and your ability to eat, like maybe he was going to immediately dismiss you from Christ Cares, although like that's bad for his reputation, so he wouldn't. So it was kind of like, I'm hiding the baby because you don't want the baby, but what was he going to do?
Right.
Like what are the consequences that you are afraid of, other than him not being immediately excited about it? But you've robbed him of that opportunity because of how you're handling it.
Yeah.
So that was an instance where I was like, girl, you're way off.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
everything about you is wrong.
Yeah.
Even to the going to the doctor to see, you know, how much BDSM they could do, how much was too much. They get back to the Kamiku, or however you say it, and the lady knows she
yes
Ida
yes
knows,
Ida knows.
she
Ida's
knows
passing her smoothies like,
right,
girl, you better eat something healthy for this baby. Like,
right. And Miss Rima is finally like, if you ain't eating
right,
the baby, you know, you don't get nothing
right,
else. You know, all of these people are kind of forcing her to reckon with the fact that she is pregnant and needs to deal with the fact that she's pregnant by this man.
right.
And she really tries to opt out of the whole engagement, which was counter to what she said she wanted from him in the first place.
Yes. And look, you know, going back to fear of the rejection, but it was still this, okay, but still. And she knew, right? She knew she knew that it was only going to be worse the longer, and she just kept going with it. And so I was just kind of like, sis, I like, I know your feelings are hurt, but like, I can't.
And I think she, to me, like, and the other thing that I wasn't able to get with her on was, if you're done to the tune of moving out, then the conversation is, I'm pregnant, I'm not coming back.
Right.
We need to make the following arrangements.
Right.
But that wasn't where she was. And so it took her some time to get herself together. And then she don't really tell him. She ends up blurting it out.
Exactly, right? Because life, right?
Exactly.
And so it came out in like almost the worst way possible. It was just like,
yes, and corny, mercy. Which thankfully Love put that in the book. Talk about don't kill him, because if you kill him, you're killing his grand. What?
Right.
Like, girl,
like right. It was like of all the ways, of all the ways, which is why, like, I almost felt like, you know, his it wasn't intended to be get back, but him blurting out the business in front of Bradley West and the other folks.
Yes.
It's just kind of like, well, I guess now y'all both done yelled out something stupid. Like,
right. But I didn't even feel like he was wrong in that. Like, I mean, we don't know how big Kima's child is, but you do need to be careful.
Yeah, but we know that it was fueled.
You feel like it was more intentional.
It was fueled and motivated by jealousy.
Because Bradley was in there. Exactly. That's true.
Right.
That's true. Because that was the reason he went there. Yeah.
Exactly. Because Precious had, you know, stoked the flame, and
that's true.
You know, started that mess. And, you know, I think Ezra might have said to himself that he wanted, like, he didn't realize until after the fact, right, that he had interrupted was in fact
an act. That's true. He thought she was alone with Bradley.
Exactly.
Because Precious came in there with the bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I was just kind of like, well, you know, now y'all both done had a dumbass blurt moment over this pregnancy. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you both, dummies.
Congratulations. So I know that's really, I mean, those were the things that, because the other things we've talked about, so I won't rehash, you know, other things that we've talked about. And I know we're going to be turning our attention to Raj and Winter. Yes. I had an epiphany that I think Winter is Lex in some ways with the stronger foundation.
All day.
Right? The healthier
all
foundation.
Day. Yeah.
Lex would have been more Winter, who did not hold her tongue, right? Mm-hmm. Winter was just kind of like, you can kiss my entire ass with your crabby bit of self. But Winter had the benefit of a foundation that Lex did not.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
And so, you know, I think those are my two favorite LB women as is. So
yeah,
I seeing that parallel. I don't think I thought about that parallel and that distinction until now in terms of the foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do look forward to
I can't wait to talk about them. I said that last week, but I really can't. I
the
love
McKinnons.
them.
The
Oh my God, I love them.
McKinnons.
Okay, so I just have, let's see. Okay, so him calling her Alexis versus Lex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this idea of like what what you were before me, I acknowledge to some degree, although he needed a little help. But I think it was him somehow differentiating, at least in his relationship with her. Like this whole, I'm thinking Saul to Paul, but it's not quite that. It's more like, I want to, number one, I want to call you when nobody else calls you.
Yep.
Like there's a little bit of ownership and being
And
demanding and
and we
bossy
have a relationship that is different from
that is
every other
different from
relationship.
everybody else's,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
also, it was really the bringing together her history, and Lex is a warrior and Lex is a fighter and Lex can figure it out and she can do anything, with who she ends up being to him.
Mm.
And especially because in the Sadiq series, we see that he's being, oh Lord, I forget the name of it. Oh, it's not ordination. It might be ordination. I'm losing some of my church words. But in the Sadiq series, we see him being ordained bishop.
Mm-hmm.
But there might be a different word, like a more official word for it.
Mm-hmm.
But we see that whatever, Bylon is watching it on TV. And we see him crying into Lex's hair, and she's holding something for him, his hat or the scepter or some, the special church stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a moment where you really saw how much she meant to him.
Yeah.
And especially towards the end of book 3, where she says, I want to help with your ministry when I'm ready. And it's something that just overtakes him and makes him want to, I think that's when he says, I want to take you away.
Yes.
Because after all of what they've been through in that last year, and she still wants him, and she still wants to be a part of all the different facets of his life. So I feel like that name thing meant something there. Like, it had a couple different layers to it. The other thing that I would just talk about before we close is, we haven't talked much about her father and how terrible he was, but of course he was terrible. It's just no need to talk about Rasul. He is fine in the federal penitentiary system, and that's what it is. But I have said before that I wanted him to suffer longer. And I did want him to suffer longer. I have a whole fan fiction in my head where Mary doesn't die and he has to pay the full price because his time was cut short by the death of his mother.
Yes.
His time of suffering.
Yes.
But at the same time, I understand narratively why there needed to be something that broke that period.
Yeah.
Because they could have just gone on like that forever. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is very difficult to write a couple coming to terms without something else kind of forcing it. Because otherwise you're going to write a 900-page book.
Yeah.
So, but I did want him, and in some ways he did suffer more because she withheld the pregnancy from him, and that really hurt him.
Yeah.
But I just felt like him knowing what she went through and not acknowledging it and not talking about how that was going to work in the context of BDSM.
Yeah.
He needed to deal with that shit.
Yeah.
Like, that was not okay. And as much as I love Ezra as a character and many of his mannerisms and who he ultimately was to her, that was foul.
Yeah, no, it was, it really, really was, right? Yeah, it really was. And I think to your point, something had to break the stalemate. But also it was Lex had to get off the pot too.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
And it was like, if you're gonna be with him, then be with him. If you're not gonna be with him,
then don't be with him. Stop letting him stay in your room.
Him. Right. But this whole, because you ultimately said yes. You could have said, when he proposed a July wedding date, you could have said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Hold the
too
sauce.
much, too much, right? Too much." But you didn't.
Right.
So again, that accountability. But yeah, I think you make an important one where it's like the couple can stay in that limbo, and the reader is like, so how long we gonna be
Right. How
here?
long are we gonna
And
be
I've definitely read
here?
books where I've kind of been like, so how I feel like we've been here
Mm-hmm.
forever. And whereas I think with her being at the hotel, and then when he starts, they start dating and going to the movies, or going to when they go to see Phantom of the Opera, or whatever the
Right.
case may be.
Right.
I both felt the time of it, that it was taking time. It
Mm-hmm.
did not feel like it was dragging, and it didn't feel like it was necessarily, it happened quickly,
Yeah, it's
right?
true. It's true.
But I agree with you that the petty part of me was like, well, I wanted him to suffer a little bit longer too. But I was glad that Lex continued to be who we knew her to be, which was, no, we ain't got to, we're going to set this to the side, and immediately went into, like we talked about last week,
Yes.
immediately went into, I got to be supportive of you because we got bigger fish to fry.
Right.
Our fish is
Right.
big, but
Right.
we actually do have a bigger fish to fry if they're telling you your mother is in the hospital and it doesn't look good, and it goes, the worst way possible.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards jumping in and, setting things in motion for them to go to Kamigu, and, saying, well, give me the pictures, or, handling
Yes. Yes.
the invite list for his side for the funeral and whatnot, without him even knowing about that.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Just being, and that was intuitively who Lex was.
Mm-hmm. She
Um,
was a caregiver.
she was absolutely a caregiver, and that was, I enjoyed seeing that, because we understood she wasn't sacrificing her own happiness or peace of mind. It wasn't about that. It was her acknowledging that this thing has happened over which neither one of us had any control,
Mm-hmm.
and all we can do is react and respond at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree
So
with that.
yeah.
Oh, I love this series. It's one of my
As do
favorites.
I. As do I. I might go back and just read it
I
again, just because it
know.
just is so.
It's so good.
Love,
Um
love. That was both a cry for the woman and a
right.
proclamation of my feelings for this book. It was one
For
in the
sure.
same.
Absolutely. All right. When we speak again, we will be speaking about Winter and Raji. We're going to try to tackle them in one extra long episode. We'll
Yeah.
see. I think we'll return, though, to our previous format with the love like stab.
Yep.
But yeah, but they're she did the damn thing with them too.
Yes.
She did the damn thing.
I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, y'all, thank y'all for listening. This is the end of our coverage of the Love Unaccounted series, and we look forward to y'all joining us when we talk about the rhythm. Wait a minute. Is it the Rhyme of Love? What's the name? Love and Rhythm and Blues?
Yes, that's
Is
the
the
name of the
series.
series,
Love
and the
and Rhythm and
first one
Blues.
is Rhythm of Blues, and second is
Rhyme of
Rhyme of
Love.
Love.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Attorney General, you have a good one.
You too, doll.
Bye.
Bye.